Hey viewers, my name's Cara. I'm your host for Tuesdays on the Pagan Perspective, and this week we're talking about pagan wedding rites. This is an answer to a specific question, so we're not just going to be talking about all different sorts of wedding rites, although that would be a really interesting subject if we can explore it later or on our own. But this week's question comes from someone who is getting married sometime soon this year. The bride-to-be is a kitchen witch-ish sort of pagan, and the groom is agnostic. So they wanted to have a wedding rite that would involve the divine in some way but not be getting married in a Christian church. So they've chosen to go with an Asatru ceremony because it's one of the official rites in Norway, which I would guess is where they're from. So their decision has been made. What we say this week will not determine whether or not they decide to do this. They've already made up their minds about it, but the question is just what are our thoughts about this, about them deciding to use a ceremony that is not the path that they personally follow, and do we think they're overstepping any kind of boundaries with this? So my first thought is just that I don't know a lot about Asatru in general. It's not my path. And while I am learning a little bit more about Norse tradition, I don't know anything about Asatru specifically. I can't talk today, I apologize. I didn't do my vocal warm-ups. So I don't really know if within that tradition whether they would find it offensive for someone outside to use their ceremony. So I can't speak to it in that regard because I don't know whether or not it is thought of as offensive. And also I can say that I wouldn't personally do it because a lot of my path is stuff that I write myself. So if it were me, I would just look for a general pagan wedding rite, look up, traditions of pagan wedding ceremonies and pick and choose what I want, and I would just create my own. A bit of a story to go along with that. One of my ex-boyfriends, who is also pagan, recently married a pagan girl. And they came to my mother to perform the ceremony because my mother is an ordained ULC minister, Universal Life. And so all of the ceremonies that my mother has done have been basically Christian-based because that's where she comes from. And so my pagan friends wanted to get married and they looked for, are there any pagan wedding ceremonies? And they found a couple that they said they really didn't like. And they didn't find any that they did like, so they told my mom to go ahead and do a Christian ceremony for them. And I said, wait, no. Mom can include a Christian prayer if she wants to because that's her faith and she's performing the ceremony, but if you guys want a pagan ceremony, let's put one together because that's a big part of what I do. So, if you can't find pieces, parts, I'll write something for you. And so they ended up finding, I guess, just some really general, blessing of the four elements that they could do and something else. And so they found pieces in books. I don't remember what books. Don't ask right now. I won't remember. But somewhere they found these things, and so they picked and chose those things, but the one thing they couldn't find was a ring blessing ceremony, and so I wrote one for them. And it basically just had to do with the symbolism of what rings are and what that has to do with their pagan mindset. So essentially it was just a prayer and speaking about the symbolism of what these rings represent without ever mentioning the Christian God, which is what made it pagan or universal to me. So that's what I would do. I would just write something. But as for the situation where you have chosen to use the rite of another tradition or ceremony, again, without knowing whether that group personally finds it offensive for someone else to use it, I would say that as long as something about that rite speaks to you, then why not? Because it's your personal thing. It would be one thing to use the ceremony of another group just because you wanted to have a pagan ceremony, but the ceremony itself doesn't really hold anything special for you and your partner, you and your spouse to be. Then that would be different. But I'm sure this is also a decision that has been made because you actually really like it and are really looking forward to using this. So yes, in my opinion, I understand where that's coming from, and though I wouldn't do it because I would write my own, for people who don't write their own, I think it's perfectly acceptable to go and find a rite that really speaks to you, that you feel is going to be good for your partnership and your journey into married life. And I wish I knew a little bit more insider information about Asatru. Maybe some of our viewers are of that path and could speak to whether or not that faith itself might have a problem with it. Because I really don't know. Another quick thing, actually, I just remembered, the director that I was working with on the musical that I just finished this summer, she went to a wedding of one of her friends who is Catholic, and they had an Egyptian-themed wedding. It wasn't an Egyptian pagan ceremony or anything like that. I'm sure it was a Catholic ceremony, but the theme of the wedding was Egyptian because the bride, I forget her title, but her job, her career field, has her traveling, and she spent a lot of time working in Cairo. So there were all these different sort of Egyptian symbols everywhere as part of their decorations, and they had little porcelain clay glazed scarabs that they gave to everybody as a wedding gift, and each of the tables, instead of being numbered, was named after a deity of the Egyptian pantheon or someone else famous in Egyptian history, and then at each table your place card had a brief history and facts about the person that your table was named after. So it was a historical thing for her, but it was just, you know, you don't always expect a Catholic ceremony and reception to also be Egyptian. So okay, I think that's enough storytelling for today. I'm gonna go edit this video for you. The collab's anniversary is coming up in August on my birthday. Thank you all for being here with us. It's just really exciting to see where we've been and how far we've come and getting new topics all the time. I recently tried to catch up with some of the rest of the collab's videos, and I'm always so impressed, and I learn so much from everyone else. So thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next week. Don't forget to be awesome, blessed be, and goodbye.